Hello, everyone. What you're seeing right now is the results of a couple days worth of testing, creating a faster than boat method of travel using the new Sulfur cubes. So, for the past couple days since the new Java snapshot was announced, I guess not announced but released, I've been messing around in my test world, trying to see if I can make any kind of substantial improvements to methods of travel using the new Sulfur Cube. And I've managed some success in terms of the kind of infrastructure that you can build with this thing, but there's also a lot of problems to come with it because it's no secret that this is one of the more controversial additions to this game. In particular, a lot of people struggle to see the benefit of having a mob like this. And for the most part, I think that I like the concept of the Sulfur Cube. In actuality, what it is a customizable physics prop where you can turn any Minecraft block into a physics prop with its own, unique properties. At least that's sort of what it should be. I think as of right now, the results that you can achieve with it are too limited. I think truly the Sulfur Cube will be only as good as how unique the outcomes from it can be. As I've spent a couple days messing around with them, and really the only thing that I've had any kind of success with so far is the the ice variant, because the ice variant allows you to move the Sulfur Cube in a way that's mostly frictionless. And thanks to the leash rework from a couple updates ago, the same thing that has my gas elevators over there working, you can attach a mount and you can have either a perpetual loop like this or a long stretch of highway like what you saw earlier. So this is great, of course, for, builds that are contained within a small area. But with any, like, two or more entity system like this, there's, the concern of chunk loading. I made a point of a lot of the elevator systems that I built over here being built within a single chunk. And that's for stability reasons, because as I move through this video, you'll find that a handful of these systems over here will break because I've went all the way over there and unloaded them. And if you unload them in an improper manner, they're going to break. So that's something to consider as we're looking at all of this, that there is that inherent limitation, and that will probably discourage people from using this long term. But I think in terms of the impact that it has on build aesthetics and, how you can fit this thematically into your Minecraft world, I think that there's a lot of potential for use as travel, but there's also a lot of issues too. So the main thing that's getting all of these working is these are all stacks of 23 boats, and colliding with 23 boats that are stacked on top of each other is of course going to push things away. And with an entity that's has such low friction, you can get it to push pretty far and pretty fast. So the problem mainly with this is that it is pretty costly, because unlike launching a player with a boat launcher, like for example putting myself, let's say, like right here, walking into this, I can give myself a pretty decent amount of force, and there's lots of clips of people, using this to insta-kill things with spears and stuff like that, and it's pretty practical for use on players, but the only problem is that when you try to put a mob inside of a traditional boat launcher like this, that's going to happen. So, most boat stacks will typically use more than 23, and that will almost immediately result in the Sulfur Cube getting pulled inside and dying. So, that problem is twofold. Number one, it means that we need to occupy every single one of these boats in order for the Sulfur Cube to be pushed by it reliably. And the other problem is that our boat stacks can't go higher than 23 without them killing anything that we can put inside of it. So I tried a couple different alternatives to try to get entities that could fit in a higher boat stack than usual without dying, and a lot of the usual culprits that people use for things like silverfish XP and whatnot, like the Allay and the Armadillo, don't really work. If I try to put the Armadillo inside while it's hiding, the boat will not care and it will still kill it. So there's not much we can do in the way of filling these boats unless the boats themselves have less than 23 in an individual stack. So that very harshly limits the amount of speed that we can put into a cube. So this is what you would expect with that limitation normally, which is 2 boat stacks, each with 23 boats, all filled with cubes so that an additional cube won't get pulled inside, and a launcher system like this one. So right now, the Sulfur Cube is having momentum built up in here because it's held in place, and when the pistons lift up, that momentum will no longer be constrained and it will fly along the track. I can attach to this guy, and what is most often going to happen with a cube in a configuration like this is the boat will kind of gain a mind of its own. This is because the collisions with the Sulfur Cube are elastic, and so the game does a decent amount of work pre-calculating the trajectory of the cube, and that, data being transferred to the boat is going to cause an effect like this. So yeah, this is the effect of 46 boats on a Sulfur Cube. It has what I would call a reasonable speed, but a lot of people kind of hope for a system this complicated to provide more speed than a boat. So if we want to aim for more speed, we have to kind of get more inventive with our methods of launching this guy. So I did some tinkering, and I believe that I pushed the Sulfur Cube to its absolute limit in terms of its use as a travel system, which is I had to discover a little bit about boat launchers and stuff. So with a typical boat launcher, you just have it kind of poking through the corner, and the way that it works is the boat has an additional hitbox other than its usual bounding box here that will push things within about 3 pixels of it, but that hitbox is very, very short height-wise. So here I have a boat that's just slightly lower than a full block, and I can fit into this corner and stay here just fine without having to worry about overcoming the force of the boat. just one boat pretty reliably prevents me from going into this corner. So that collision box is what's used to pull entities into the boat, and it works even when it can't actually really collide. But the one thing that I did try that I know for absolute certain is that the collision box does go away if the boat is considered sunken. So if I place the sulfur cube boat inside of the water there, I can now, or more accurately, I can't go into this corner still, but the sulfur cube can without getting launched. And if I take that water away with a bucket, the sulfur cube will get pulled inside, and if I put another one in, it will get launched. So the only way that we can launch things is with boats that are fully occupied. So in order to occupy the boats and still retain the ability to push things, I have to stack 2 layers of boats on top of each other, which is what I've done here. And the only way to do that, unfortunately, is to absolutely bother Mojang with ethics, because there's exactly one entity in this entire game that can fit inside of a boat and have its hitbox be contained entirely within, and that is specifically baby turtles. There's no other entity in the game that's small enough to achieve this, and all I have to do is push him inside of the boat. And as you can see, his hitbox is fully contained within the boat. So I can't look at him, I can't even really see the bounding box visually. And if I try to do the same over here with, say, a chicken, even a baby chicken, which would be much easier to get, unfortunately, I can just barely see his bounding box peeking through, and that means I can still deal damage to him, and that means he would take cramming damage from boats stacked on top of each other. So the end result of all of that work is this system where I've stacked a little bit less than 92 boats on top of each other. Originally, I did all the work putting all 46 baby turtles into the lower boats and then occupying the higher boats with sulfur cubes. Did all the work, and I had 90 boats here, and I had to remove them because I ended up actually making it too fast for the leash to stay attached. So this is pretty much the limit in terms of how fast we can travel, at least to my knowledge, but now we can see what we saw at the beginning of the video again, where you put pig with a saddle inside of a boat, hook that boat up to the sulfur cube, get inside of the boat, and I can hit this button, and we go along. And this is extremely fast. I did the math on the original video that I uploaded to social media, and the fastest it gets is just over 100 meters per second. After about 1,000 tiles, which is not quite this, but I did the math for it, it'll slow down to only about 50, which is the point at which the boat would start to catch up. But by then you've already traveled a 1,000 block distance, and you accelerate to full speed instantly, whereas the boat takes a certain amount of time to accelerate to full speed. And as an added bonus, as I've shown over here, this thing can turn on a dime where a boat cannot. So it'll be much easier to do long distance travel with this setup, because you won't have to worry about bone alignments, and you also won't even have to worry about holding forward. The only real caveat is reliably loading another shulker attached to a pig into the system, and also building it is significantly more expensive. So there's upsides and downsides still. It's not very practical for a lot of other reasons, namely trying to reset it. A system like this will only work as long as both ends are loaded, and I really don't think it's worth it to use chunk loaders along the entire stretch of highway just to make sure that it's stable. You know, at a certain point, it just becomes a little bit too much, whereas, boat highways are just ice and just boats, which a lot of people are probably going to prefer anyways. But just to prove that it's faster, I have a setup over here where we can do a speed test with a perfectly aligned boat. And we can see the Sulfur Cube very quickly gets ahead of us. At a certain point, our speed equalizes, and right around where the track ends, I would probably catch up. But by this point, we can't even see where we started, and that doesn't even take into account the fact that a lot of the time, people's highways won't be this long, and if they are, they will often come with turns, and this thing can make turns quicker. You can also potentially re-accelerate the Sulfur Cube if you wanted to keep its speed ahead of a boat long term. It would probably only take a couple seconds of it being motionless for that to work, and by that point the difference has already been made in terms of how much farther the Sulfur Cube has traveled than the boat. So yeah, that is officially faster than boat travel, and it's more or less done with mechanics that I don't think Mojang is likely to change, since I know that's a lot of people's concern right now with the snapshots. There's the whole thing about people wondering if they're going to keep the ceiling sticking effect that was shown in the preview, and if they aren't going to keep it, will they reintroduce it? I certainly hope so. I think the bare minimum that they could do is give us an anti-gravity Sulfur Cube, even if it required an expensive material like chorus fruit or, whatever. I would pay good money to have one, because not having to worry about ground friction is a pretty big deal. Especially when we can make things like this. So hopefully they give us more Sulfur Cube configurations to work with. Hopefully we can see machines like this one improve. Maybe some better execution than my own, because it's mostly just alright, just kind of hacked together for the purpose of making a video on it. But yeah, it's not entirely useless like some people are quick to think, and there's a lot that we could potentially do with it. I just hope that, we get more from it over time. It's one of those systems that seems very easy to expand upon, which Minecraft has been pretty big on adding lately, but they haven't actually done a lot of work expanding on the things that they were made from the ground up to be expanded upon, so it's not very likely, but, we do what we can for the time being. And hopefully the Sulfur Cube, when it's fully released, will have some practical uses beyond just this. But what we have now is still pretty good. This is better than what we could achieve before, so at the very least, that's a success. I will probably find an excuse to put a pig Sulfur Cube monorail in my base the next time that I play this game. But with that being said, that's pretty much everything, so thanks for watching.